This week on Jerusalem Dateline, we head into the Jihad capital of Europe, Brussels, and its most infamous neighborhood called Molenbeek. Plus, how European politicians and the media have hid the danger of radical Islam. And a report on the scope of Christian persecution around the world. It's bad, and it looks like it will get worse. And a feel-good story about how some Israeli doctors and nurses are spreading hope and giving the gift of life by saving a child's heart. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Many Belgians were shocked but not surprised by the terror attacks in Brussels on March 22nd. That's because they say the terrorists responsible for those attacks came from an area where radical Islam has been allowed to thrive. That's what I discovered on my recent trip to Brussels. This is the Brussels neighborhood of Molenbeek. It may look unassuming, but within lies a virtual hotbed of terror. 3 terrorists from November's Paris massacre came from here. It also connected to last year's Charlie Hebdo attack and the killing of 4 people at the Brussels Jewish Museum in 2014. Most of the Belgians who left to join ISIS also came from Molenbeek. It led French journalist Eric Zemmour to write, instead of bombing Raqqa, the ISIS capital, France should be bombing Molenbeek. Molenbeek here is perhaps the most infamous of areas in Belgium and throughout Europe that have become havens for radical Islam, and one reason why Brussels has earned the title the Jihad capital of Europe. Some might think Molenbeek is outside Brussels city limits. It's not.
It must be very confusing for outsiders, and I've read sometimes in the international press, Molenbeek, a suburb of Brussels, and so probably in the imagination of your average American viewer, probably thinking of the suburb. What is a suburb? Something 10, 15 miles outside the city center. But it's 1.5 kilometers or 1 mile or so from what is considered the Brussels city center.
A 20-minute walk would take you to the memorial for victims of the very attack that originated in the neighborhood. And Molenbeek is just one of many Islamic neighborhoods spread throughout Belgium.
We have also Anderlecht, Jet, Schaerbeek, some places of the city of Brussels, Laken, Vilvoorde, Verviers, other cities. So it's not only Molenbeek, but Molenbeek is certainly one of the most symbolic and representative.
Parliament member Vivian Teitelbaum says what went on in Molenbeek is an open secret.
Everybody knew what had been going on, what the socialist mayor was allowing to happen, the way he bought social peace with some mosques and some imams. So yes, he allowed for those radicals to evolve in a context where they were not threatened by any means and where they could develop their strategy.
She's referring to Molenbeek's former mayor, socialist Philippe Moreau.
He has really turned a blind eye to what has happened, the parallel societies, the radicalization, and anybody who tried to alert the public to what's going on was immediately shut down by him.
But Molenbeek is just one example of radicalized neighborhoods throughout Europe.
In those places you have first a very strong homogeneous population. So you have quarters, areas, neighborhoods that are entirely Muslim. And therefore, it's also a community effect because you can blend in very easily. You can hide, obviously, like Abdeslam Salah, without having any threats of things leaking to the outside.
A French minister recently claimed at least 100 of these enclaves exist in France.
Molenbeek, of course, is the most famous example now. Brussels is called the Jihad capital of Europe, and I think it's correct, but you can also say that of parts in London or parts in France, in Paris.
Today, we have a clear and imminent threat on Europe.
Counter-terrorism expert Claude Moniquet says the numbers add up to a massive threat.
Official European Union figure, we have between 7,000 and 10,000 European people or residents linked to the jihad in Syria. And at those people you must add probably 5,000 to 10,000 followers, sympathizers, which could maybe radicalize and become terrorists tonight or tomorrow morning.
Van Roy says Europe should see Molenbeek as a warning.
In Belgium, or in Flanders. We are not yet a minority. We have 7%, almost 7% Muslims in Belgium. But in some cities and in some areas, we are already a minority, like in Molenbeek, for example. And you see what is the result of that. Terrorism, jihadism, Sharia law introduced. So never become a minority.
He recommends listening to former Muslims.
I know many of them, and they all say the same. Don't let your country Islamize, because Islam is a violent ideology, and they can know it because they experienced it. Why shouldn't we believe these people? We also believed former communists who said the same about communism. Well, the same goes for Islam. We should listen to the people who experienced it.
Being in that neighborhood was a revelation. They aren't telling us the truth. That's what people in Europe have been saying after they found out their governments and news media have been covering up the actions of some of the immigrants in their countries. And those actions include crime, chaos, and terrorism. Dale Hurd brings us the shocking report.
We now know there has been a cover-up by governments and the media in Western Europe about the potential danger of immigration from the Islamic world. It was a conspiracy involving politicians, police officials, and journalists. Europeans were programmed by a relentless media campaign to believe immigration was good, and criticism of immigration was racist. Months before the deadly Islamic terror attacks in Belgium, left-wing demonstrators were playing dead in the streets, protesting for more immigration from the Middle East and against stronger borders in Europe. Stronger borders that might have saved the lives of 34 people killed in Brussels last month.
No more walls in Europe.
The left's mantra has been no walls, no borders. But many Europeans now realize they were sold a bill of goods about open borders and immigration. Media campaigns like this were meant to condition Europeans to feel badly about opposing immigration.
But one thing Vincent has always had a problem with is foreigners, especially the new lot. All these Ivankas, Elenas, Bogdans, or Pedro, Joaos, social benefits abusers, stealing honest people's jobs for peanuts as a wage, stealing people's lives, wives, even their cats.
Voices who warned about the threat from open immigration were either branded racist or simply ignored. This Belgian Jewish leader warned CBN News a year and a half ago that the Belgian government was too soft on Muslim extremists and more attacks were coming.
You know, we say, I don't know if I will say it right in English, but if you want to eat with the devil, you need a very long fork. I don't know if we say it in English. I think that there is no fork long enough to eat with Islamism.
And the multicultural charade has crumbled. In Germany, when the city of Cologne was caught trying to cover up massive New Year's sex attacks. In Sweden, where the public learned that the police and the media covered up large-scale sexual assaults at a summer music festival in Stockholm last year. And in Brussels, which became a home to some of the most dangerous terrorists in Europe. In cities across Western Europe, women are now afraid to walk alone at night on the street. Muslims make up almost half of Belgium's prison population. Jews everywhere live in fear. This didn't just happen, but in many cases the information about it was suppressed. Sweden has been notorious for censoring the problems of immigration. Newspapers obscured the faces and changed the skin tone of crime suspects with immigrant backgrounds, but showed their faces if they were white native Swedes. The Swedish police even had a special code when handling immigrant crime, 291. Swedish policy analyst Tino Sanandaji.
Code 291, and this is, now in every Swedish newspaper is reporting this. The police were told to cover up any crime relating to the refugees. Do not tell the media, do not leave a paper trail. So, and apparently we're finding out now that there were hundreds of violent crimes.
Some Swedes have become so frustrated with the censorship that they go to social media to get the truth out themselves.
Hey, welcome to Sweden. This is the #1 rape capital of Europe.
A lot of Swedes are angry. They realize they've been lied to. And some are wondering, what else are the government and media hiding from us?
You have a lot of problems that were never reported until a few, literally days ago. But they decided it was against their ideological agenda. They covered it up.
The man who found evidence that one of Sweden's largest papers covered up the sex assaults in Stockholm is journalist Chang Frick, who says journalists have been either too afraid or not allowed to report the truth.
I read books by Kafka, and I read books about what life was in Soviet Union and this and that. Everybody was checking each other. This is the situation we got in Sweden, but it's more in a soft way. You don't get in jail for having the wrong thoughts. You lose your job, you would get social stigmatized.
The paper Dagens Nyheter says the claim that it was part of a cover-up is a lie and that it could not confirm the story. Ingrid Carlquist, a distinguished fellow at the Gatestone Institute, has been warning Swedes for years that they were being misled about immigration. Now she feels vindication.
I've been trying to tell the Swedish people, this for 5 years or something. And everybody said, no, it couldn't be like that. Politicians don't lie like that. They lie about little things. They don't lie about big things. Journalists, they are honest. They couldn't lie about this. No. Now everything has exploded. And there is not a person, there is not a living person in this country who can go on doing like this. Because now it's out there.
Swedish immigration policy has now changed. It was forced to because it faced a system-wide collapse. But if you think the European left has learned its lesson about the danger of open borders, you would be wrong. After the Brussels attack, there were several articles essentially blaming terrorism on racism and calling for continued open borders. There are, of course, refugees who need help, but Europe's misplaced generosity has brought war to its doorstep, and some believe that politicians, police officials, and journalists now have blood on their hands. Dale Hurd, CBN News, reporting from Brussels and Stockholm.
Coming up, an important and alarming report on the rise of Christian persecution around the world when we come back. Welcome back to Jerusalem Dateline. Christian persecution is on the rise around the world, according to Open Doors USA. The group's president, David Curry, says many Americans don't understand how serious the state of Christian persecution is throughout the world, and he expects it to get worse. Abigail Robertson brings us this story.
Religious freedom is a far-off dream for many Christians facing daily persecution.
The life of religious minorities, and especially believers and Christians, are miserable in Pakistan. We have been persecuted. We are treated as a second and third class citizen in Pakistan.
Horrific events like the Taliban's Easter attack keep happening, and Christians see little to no protection from their governments.
The government still not doing what is needed in Pakistan. And right now it's not a matter of only religious liberty, freedom. It's a matter of life and death.
Several experts on religious freedom met in Washington to discuss how global religious persecution affects the United States. Former Congressman Frank Wolf says this is a national security issue for the United States, and Congress has got to wake up and take action.
The administration and the Congress has to deal with it, or else some very bad things are going to happen in the world.
Wolf says he agrees with the Pope that we are in World War III.
We are in World War III, and so the Congress should be dealing with this. Forget the administration, holding extensive hearings, bringing people in, bringing the best political minds in, the best military minds in, and dealing with this.
He also says there is an undeniable connection between the string of terror attacks around the world.
There is a connection between Boko Haram. He pledged it to ISIS. There is a connection to Al-Shabaab in Somalia. There is a connection with what's taking place in Libya. I mean, we saw what took place in France. We saw what took place in San Bernardino.
Panelist Tina Ramirez started a group called Hardwired Global, which educates leaders on religious freedom and encourages them to fight to change laws in their countries that oppress people of minority religions.
You see for the first time in Iraq's history this movement for religious freedom beginning to emerge. What we saw since we've been training leaders throughout Iraq is that they are actually being inspired. They actually have developed a greater appreciation for people of different faiths and for the freedom of people of other faiths to practice their religion however they want.
Although it feels like a helpless situation, the panelists are encouraged by the fact that they are making a difference in the lives of the people they are reaching. Reporting from the Family Research Council in Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
You can find out more about persecution and what's being done to stop it on cbnnews.com. Up next, a story of hope and redemption for a young African girl that takes us from Tel Aviv all the way to Tanzania. Welcome back. As journalists, we often tell a story and don't always see what happens down the road. But CBN News was privileged recently to see how life-saving heart surgery in Israel affected the life of a Tanzanian orphan. CBN News Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has that story.
That's the sound of a healthy heart. But it hasn't always been that way for Esther, a 14-year-old Tanzanian orphan. She suffered from rheumatic heart disease as a young child. 5 years ago, CBN News first met Esther as the Israeli organization Save a Child's Heart worked to get her life-saving surgery. Dr. Alona Raucher met Esther in Israel then and examined her recently in Tanzania during a Save a Child's Heart medical mission to Dar es Salaam.
When she came to Israel, the valves were leaking so badly that the heart was enlarged to twice the size of a child. She had, at the age of 10 years, the size of a heart of an old man.
Save a Child's Heart is based here at the Wolfson Medical Center near Tel Aviv. Esther made what some say was a miraculous journey to get here for the surgery that saved her life.
So we brought her to the Mater Hospital in Nairobi, and there we were told she needed an operation, otherwise she may live 1 or 1.5 more years.
Angelica runs the orphanage where Esther lives. On the bus ride home, an amazing thing happened.
She entertained all the passengers, and they asked me, who is this girl? And then she was 8 by that time. And then there was a young lady next to me, and when I told them she has a heart problem, needs an operation, she said, oh, I just came from SAC, from Israel. I was a volunteer there. So you could contact them.
And she did. She discovered that a team from Save a Child's Heart was coming in 2 days to climb Mount Kilimanjaro near the orphanage. One of them was Tanzanian doctor Godwin Godfrey. They met Esther and decided she was a candidate for surgery in Israel.
I see that as a miracle, yet the mystery of God.
Dr. Lior Sassone operated on Esther for hours.
Her heart was huge. She was very limited in very simple tasks. Even simple walking, it was difficult for her.
Fast forward to 2016 and a family reunion of sorts. We caught up with Esther when Save a Child's Heart went to Tanzania on a cardiac medical mission. Esther came for a checkup and to visit her Israeli friends.
For now, I feel very better, and I thank God because He has been taking care of me from the beginning until now. Because if it could not be God, I could not be here now. And also, I thank you guys of SACH for helping me. They say that I'm among of their family. So I'm really happy to have Israel as my friends and family.
Before the surgery, Esther had no energy. Now she's #1 in her class. And Esther has big plans for the future.
I want to become a cardiologist. I want to help my fellow Tanzanians.
That would be good. Tanzania has 50 million people and only one heart hospital. Dr. Godwin Godfrey trained with Save a Child's Heart in Israel for 5 years. This is what he told CBN News then.
This training will be one of its kind for my country. So hopefully when I go back, I will actually start open heart surgery also for the young children.
Now he's back in Tanzania as the only pediatric heart surgeon in the country. He's got 500 children on his waiting list.
We need to grow more, to train more of our local people, and if we look at this population that we have, we at least need maybe 20 centers that can perform open heart surgery for children for these countries.
And what would Esther tell other children that need surgery?
They shouldn't be scared because you can't even hear anything. It's not painful. You just live as if you're in heaven. Yeah.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Cologne, Israel, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
Up next, some thoughts on the terror attacks in Brussels and how the church can respond to the challenging days ahead. Welcome back to Jerusalem Dateline. Recently, CBN News had the opportunity to report on the tragedy and terror in Brussels. More than 30 people died and hundreds more were injured in a terror attack that struck the heart of Europe. Just 3 terrorists with homemade ingredients for their bombs shut down a major airport, paralyzed the city, and sent psychological shockwaves around the free world. One counterterrorism expert told us he estimates between 7,000 to 10,000 jihadists are now living inside the European continent. If just 3 terrorists wrought so much damage, you can imagine how much thousands more would do. We should also note the experts believe the terror attack was originally planned for Easter Sunday, perhaps the major Christian holiday of the year. The terrorists wanted to attack the church, and that's where the body of Messiah comes in. During the Easter service I attended just outside of Brussels, it struck me that the church and its power to pray holds a key to combating the potential tsunami of terror. God commanded us not only to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, but also for the peace of the city in which He planted us. In the days ahead, I believe this will be a powerful tool against the forces of darkness arrayed against us. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.